Welcome. My name is Lynn Dorman. I'm normally hosting Southern Fright Paranormal on Thursdays. We talk with guests, speaking of the paranormal. But I'm now in my sixth show of the Halloween special that I do every year. And like I said, day number 6. And during this show, we will actually go into Halloween here in the Central. If you're listening live on the East Coast, you're already into Halloween. Hallows Eve. But here in Central, we still got about 20 minutes, exactly by my computer clock. Of course, if you're watching this on delay, after the fact, on Facebook, off my profile page, Lindorm profile, welcome. Glad you're watching the show. And those of you watching on WLFE DB Radio on Facebook, either live or on delay, hello to you. Those of you watching on my YouTube channel, CArtPS Lynn Dorman, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And those of you watching on lots of delay over on all the podcast channels where WLFEDB posts my shows. Thank you very much for watching the show this time. I tell you the year, this is the 30th for 20 more minutes, 19 more minutes, 2023. So I might as well say this is Halloween season 2023. This is about to be officially Halloween. Hallows Eve. Tomorrow is Halloween. Well, actually, yeah, in 20 minutes it'll be Halloween. The next day, of course, in 20 minutes I'll be calling it tomorrow, is All Saints Day. And we'll be talking about that on All Saints Day, along with Day of the Dead, which is the 2nd. But right now, we're going to talk about Camp Douglas. When what I was talking about tonight, I decided to go ahead and do some Camp Douglas footage. What I'm going to do is show you a little bit of footage about what it looks like. So I've got an actual video, then 2 photo picture slides that I will play and narrate to you what you are looking at. All right, let's just get down to it because this is going to be a longer show. Of course, we go into Halloween. We launched a longer show than I did last night. All right, first, the video. This is just showing what Camp Douglas looks like with the cricket field, softball field there, and let's see, yeah, some stands for watching the softball. The trailer you see is the office for the park. And well, I believe we're also going to have some photos of an excavation they did there several years ago, and they found the armfuls of artifacts. The people who live in the condos next door tell me that every time they dig in their garden, they find artifacts of the Civil War. Camp Douglas was indeed a Civil War prison camp. And I'll go into a little bit of that detail later. Let's go ahead and roll the footage. There is Spoke Park District, the boy trailer, railroad tracks, electric line runs here. This is off site. This is Lake Meadows Park softball field. Public school. And full spectrum video of the media area. In the Camp Douglas site. Please forgive the wind. Of course, this is Windy City. Court. Can't park there, but we can set up stuff there. It is part of Camp Douglas. big tree over there is approximate border. I'm using path as the border. Saying I'm off site now, and now I'm on site for our purposes. A full spectrum view of the area. Pick up anything. This big open area will be a problem for nighttime because your night vision's not going to hit anything out here. But of course, if it's flooded, anything walking through will be picked up. See apartments over there. And the school behind us. Almost full circle. Back to the double wide trailer. This is the main area. Back here will be easy to set up IR cameras because of the trees, and closer toward the street be easier, along with the set to the west side of the west end of the basketball court. There's quite a few trees. Got some IR light on. Okay. We are done. Have a good day. And full spectrum video signing off. This is the diggings from the excavation they done. Well, I think I turned my mic back on. The mic went out on me. So here I am. I think it is. I can't check it right now with the video running. These are full spectrum pictures of the area. See, some of the areas are wide open fields. Some of the areas are quite shaded. And there's condos living next door. This is where the main office was, just other side of the, not closer to the street than where I'm standing here. Showed earlier a map of the old camp. There's also some area away from the Lake Meadows Park. This is the park grounds of the city of Chicago. The trailer is the office for the camp. I mean, for the park. They issue permits to use the softball field or whatever they want to do in the big field, soccer, whatever. There's a map of the old thing, the old camp. Research permit I had to get. There's another outline of the whole camp with the streets on there. Some of the release forms. Area across the street. So see, this is the highly metro area. This is north of Soldier Field. Basically, kind of on the south side of, north side of Chicago. And I said south, I meant north. Oh, and Stephen A. Douglas. His tomb is right there also. During summer months, you can actually go inside his tomb and see his sarcophagus. Stephen Douglas, the man who debated Abraham Lincoln, for the presidency. That's his memorial. This was his old property. That's why it's called Camp Douglas. He donated the land, very swampy land, for a training camp for people drafted in Chicago to serve in the U.S. Army. There's a sarcophagus. Yes, you can walk right up to the sarcophagus during the summer months when the park's open. This is around the sarcophagus in the Stephen Douglas Park. So pardon me for losing my voice right there during when the video was playing. For some reason, the microphone lost connection with StreamYard. So, here we go. Let me, for a few minutes here, since I've played this video. Oh, by the way, some of these pictures were full spectrum. Some were in normal lighting. I have nothing else to play right now. So, let's just crank up the music or the organ. And I'll be back in a minute. Now we're set. Hello. Okay, now we are set. And here we start. What in the world is going on tonight? I guess, well, it's 12:03. It's Halloween, so nothing's working right. All right. Right now, I'm going to tell you some of the history of Camp Douglas. This comes from the link below that I'm showing. On April 15th, 1861, Judge Allen C. Fuller, later Illinois' Adjutant General, recommended the site for a reception and training camp for Northern District volunteers. The camp was hastily constructed and was in constant state of flux throughout its history, with most of the building being made of whitewashed wood unfinished on the inside. The only building built on a stone foundation was likely the camp headquarters building. The camp ultimately consisted of 4 parts. The area known as Garrison Square, to the north, running on Cottage Grove, contained the main gate to the camp and the camp's headquarters, an 80 by 40-foot permanent building built on a stone foundation, and barracks for officers and men permanently assigned to the camp. The square is approximately 20 acres in area. The barracks surrounded a large rectangular parade ground with the camp flagpole located west of the headquarters building. Stables were initially located at the southern end of Garrison Square. Other administrative buildings, including hospitals, quartermaster buildings, and sawmill, were also located in Garrison Square. The original water hydrant was located in the northeast corner of the square and serves as the sole source of clean water serving the entire camp. Over time, a total of 3 hydrants served the officers and men living in the buildings on Garrison Square. The 10-acre White Oak Square to the south, fronting on College Grove, contained one-story troop barracks. These barracks housed Confederate prisoners of war until early 1864, when Prisoners Square was opened. The privies, also referred to as sinks or latrines, were out back. In the early days of the camp, these latrines were simply shallow trenches. South Square Hospital Square was located on approximately 10 acres west of White Oak Square along 33rd Place. This contained the hospitals and various quartermaster and other support facilities. Prisoner Square on 20 acres was located on the western side of the camp and ran from 31st to 33rd Street on Gills Avenue. Initially contained barracks in a square configuration similar to Garrison Square. When the newly constructed barracks opened in January 1864, there were 36 completed barracks of the total of 66 built by late 1864. A variety of administrative buildings were also contained in Prisoner Square. These included washhouses, coal sheds, a sutler store providing comfort items to prisoners for credits, available in exchange for cash, drugstore, surgeon's office, photo studio, guardhouse, and express office, and 9 hydrants in the square. History of Camp Douglas. Nearly 40,000 Union soldiers were received and trained at Camp Douglas during its existence. This number included African American volunteers. The first troops were received in September 1861. Within a month, there were nearly 5,000 men in camp. From the arrival of the first troops, Camp Douglas and its satellite camps acted as a reception and training center for the Northern District of Illinois. The state of Illinois had been divided into 3 military districts, with the Northern District consisting of the area from the southern boundary of Cook County to the Wisconsin state line, Lake Michigan to the Mississippi River. Nearly 24 infantry regiments, 2 cavalry regiments, and a number of artillery units entered Union service at Camp Douglas. Camp Douglas was one of only a few camps in the Union to receive African American volunteers. In 1860, the African American population of Illinois was 7,628, of which 3,809 were male and 1,622 men of military age. Prior to 1863, approximately 700 Illinois African Americans had joined the Union Army in other states. The potential pool of soldiers was increased by nearly 22,000 escaped slaves from Missouri who moved to Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky between 1860 and 1862. The 29th U.S. Colored Regiment was the only African American regiment, approximately 1,000 men plus officers, recruited in Illinois. Recruiting began in November 1863, while the unit entered service in Quincy Companies B and C, approximately 100 soldiers plus officers each, were recruited to Chicago. These soldiers were quartered at Camp Douglas until they were moved to Quincy. The 29th was commanded by John A. Bross, an attorney from Chicago. Colonel Bross had been assistant U.S. Marshal and a U.S. Commissioner in Chicago. After the 29th was formed, replacement African American soldiers from the Northern District were processed at Camp Douglas. The exact number of these recruits is unknown. Near the end of 1861, it became apparent the Union Army required facilities to house Confederate prisoners who were not immediately paroled. Under the parole exchange program agreed to by Union and Confederacy, captured combatants agreed in writing not to participate in additional fighting and to properly exchange for soldiers from the opposing side. Camp Douglas had major exchanges of prisoners in August 1862 and April 1863 that greatly reduced overpopulation of the camp. In August 1863, President Lincoln suspended the exchange of prisoners. The basis for the suspension was a position taken by the Confederate government that African American soldiers would be treated as escaped slaves rather than prisoners of war. The suspension lasted until near the end of the war in 1865, when limited exchanges were authorized. The suspension of prisoner exchange had a significant impact on Camp Douglas that resulted in a growing population of prisoners and overcrowded conditions. As I've said sometime before, that every decision has consequences, and this, sounding like a good decision, turned out bad for other people. The United States Army set selection criteria for prison camps. These sites were to be first, a sufficient distance from the battlefields to preclude raids to release prisoners. Second, a location with adequate transportation from the war. And finally, proximity to a metropolitan area that can provide logistic support to the facility. Chicago met all these criteria, and Camp Douglas was selected as a major prison camp for Confederate soldiers in late 1861. Early on, Major General Henry Halleck, commander of the Department of Missouri, needed to find facilities for 12,000 to 15,000 Confederate prisoners from the surrender of Fort Donelson on February 16, 1862. The location of Fort Donelson was on the Cumberland River, northwest of Nashville, within easy transportation of Cairo, Illinois. Made the movement of these first prisoners, by the Illinois Central Railroad to Camp Douglas logical. Colonel Joseph Tucker of Illinois State Militia was responsible for building Camp Douglas and acted as its first commander, even though Colonel Tucker reported to General Halleck that Chicago could hold 8,000 or 9,000 prisoners. The city and the military were not certain the camp could accommodate the prisoners. The first 1,258 prisoners arrived at Camp Douglas on February 20th, 1862. Prisoners were assigned to barracks in White Oak Square that had just been vacated by Union troops. The prison population grew to nearly 8,000 by the time of the first exchange of prisoners in 1862. Only a handful of 6 prisoners remained until additional prisoners began to arrive at year end. The peak of recruiting and receiving Union regiments took place during the year. Satellite camps from Hyde Park to a mile or so north and west of the camp were busy with Union soldiers. These camps were frequently named for their commander or main supporter. Names included Camp Dunn, Camp Mulligan, Camp Siegel, Camp Webb, and others. In July 1862, the Dix Hill Cartel came into effect. This agreement between the Union and Confederacy stated all prisoners of war are to be discharged on parole in 10 days after their capture. The provision had a significant impact on the lack of willingness of the Union Army to provide increased and improved facilities for Camp Douglas and other Union prison camps. Throughout the war, the camp was almost continuously modified to adapt to its role as a prison. In June 1863, after the camp population was reduced to nearly zero by exchange of prisoners, the camp was in deplorable shape. Damaged and burned buildings, deteriorating fences, and an inadequate water and sewage system were clearly evident. The exchange in mid-1863 was the second major exchange. The first was in mid-1862. The United States Sanitary Commission recommended the camp be abandoned. Nevertheless, repairs were made and the camp continued as a major prison facility. In December 1863, Camp Commander Charles V. DeLand ordered floors in prisoner barracks to be removed to prevent hiding prisoner constructed tunnels, and later barracks were raised about 4 feet to allow guards to see any activity under them. In September 1862, parole Union forces captured at Harper's Ferry, Virginia, were sent to Camp Douglas to serve out their parole until exchanged. These troops included approximately 8,000 paroled soldiers from the 60th Ohio, 32nd Ohio, 65th Illinois, commanded by Colonel Daniel Cameron, 31st, 111th, 115th, 125th, 126th New York, and the 9th Vermont, as well as artillery units from the 1st Indiana Battery, 15th Indiana Battery, 19th Ohio Battery, 5th New York Battery, and Phillips Cargo Battery. Of the 8,000, approximately 1,000 were from Illinois. These soldiers remained at Camp Douglas in December 1862 when they were exchanged. The exchange was purely administrative. The way it worked was the Union parolees at Camp Douglas could return to active service when the Confederate government and Union government determined that like number of rebel troops were on parole. All too often, however, rebel soldiers who were captured and released on parole never waited for the paper exchange to take place and immediately returned to combat. The use of the camp as a reception center for newly recruited soldiers, a holding center for Union parolees, and Confederate prisoner of war severely taxed the facilities and managers of the camp. Some assistance came from Chicago citizens who rallied support for Union soldiers as well as the Confederate prisoners. Individual efforts, as well as religious organizations and the Sanitary Commission, provided ongoing support for Camp Douglas throughout the war. From the time of the arrival of the first Confederate prisoners, Chicagoans were curious to see their enemies and former countrymen. Near the Camp Douglas main gate on Cottage Grove was a privately owned tower that was 50 feet high and painted red, white, and blue. For 5 cents, anyone could climb the tower and observe the prisoners. There was a second tower providing a viewing of Camp Douglas, a 20-foot free observatory built on the roof of the Camp Douglas of the, whoa, I can't read all of a sudden, built on the roof of the Cottage Grove Hotel. And speaking of that, by the way, just a personal note, probably soon after the first year, I will be undergoing cataract surgery on my left eye. So I'm having to read all this with one eye. Camp Douglas experienced a frequent exchange in its commandant and a recurring series of infrastructure problems. Hydrants that provided drinking water occasionally broke down. Corrupt government contractors cheated on food rations, and the cheaply constructed barracks frequently needed repair. By October 1863, Colonel DeLand, camp commander from August to December 1863, was spending a considerable time and effort, mostly with prisoner help, improving the barracks and installing new water and sewage system. In December, he was replaced by General William Orme. During General Orme's tenure in command, the high points were the development of a remodeled and modernized prisoner square to include plans for a new barracks, a lighted stockade fence, and new latrines. Colonel Benjamin J. Sweet was named commander of the camp in May 2nd, 1864, and would remain commander of Camp Douglas until nearly all Confederate prisoners were released in 1865. He infamously gave his guards the order to shoot to kill any prisoner who crossing the deadline and incorporated a variety of corporal punishments for those who broke camp rules. Sweet introduced the Morgan's mule to the camp. This carpenter's sawhorse is nearly 14 feet tall and could accommodate several soldiers. Prisoners were forced to straddle the mule for several hours. While this device was notorious at Camp Douglas, similar horses were used throughout the Army for prisoners and Union soldiers alike. Yes, these sawhorses were not the nice 2x4s that we have today that's gently milled that you see at Lowe's and Home Depot. They were splintered, very hard corners, unmilled, and you basically just tear up your personal bits. A lot of times they were made to sit on the prisoners anyway, were made to sit on them naked. Colonel Sweet's discipline included an insistence on cleanliness of the prison area and the prisoners. Daily sweeping of barracks and weekly scrubbing were required. Prisoners were not permitted to empty dirty water in the streets and were expected to wash themselves and their clothing every Friday. Failure to meet these requirements resulted in a 2-hour ride on the mule. While these measures seemed harsh to the prisoners, they resulted in the overall improvement of sanitary conditions in the camp and undoubtedly reduced disease and mortality. Sweet was faced with circumstances that no other commander had faced. With the suspension of prisoner exchange in mid 1863 and the realization by the prisoners that exchange was not likely, Sweet was faced with an elevated prisoner discontent, more escape attempts, and a growing prisoner population. A facility rated for 11,000 prisoners peaked at 12,092 in December 1864. With the increase in prisoners and the unlikelihood of reduction through exchange, Colonel Sweet had to place a priority on completing the construction of barracks in Prisoner Square and other facilities for the prisoners. Work on Prisoner Square, done mostly by prisoners, continued through 1864, including the addition of a 6-inch water line to replace the one of 3 inches. Overall, the physical condition of the camp improved as Prisoner Square was expanded. Inspection reports in August, September, and November 1864 indicated overall satisfactory condition of the camp facilities and the prisoner. These same reports showed concern for security and recommended additional guards and the issue of 2 cannons to control prisoners. While inspection reports were improving, the health of the prisoners was deteriorating. Big surprise here, smallpox was, in mid to late 1864, of epidemic proportions. Lieutenant Briggs' inspection report September 4th, 1864 stated the hospital for prisoners of war is not large enough. There are at least 200 prisoners sick in quarters that should be in hospital. Beginning in the summer of 1864 until the end of the year, Colonel Sweet was preoccupied by the Grand Conspiracy of 1864. This was an attempt by Confederate agents, added by opponents to the Lincoln administration, to attack the camp from the outside and liberate the incarcerated Confederates. The scheme was fortuitously broken up by U.S. Secret Service agents. Nonetheless, its existence necessitated Colonel Sweet to continue to manage the camp with an iron hand. Finally, on May 8, 1865, he received the long-awaited order from Colonel Hoffman, which ordered that all prisoners of war, except officers above the rank of colonel, who before the capture of Richmond signified their desire to take the oath of allegiance to the United States and their unwillingness to be exchanged, to be forthwith released upon their taking said oath, and transportation furnished them to their respective homes. Those not taking the oath ultimately were released and provided no assistance in returning home. How'd you like to walk from Chicago to Georgia? After the war, the government quickly sold off or destroyed the camp buildings, and the open area where the prisoners once were kept became the city's first baseball field. Camp Douglas has the unenviable distinction of having the greatest number of deaths of any Union prison. The total death toll at Camp Douglas is somewhere between 4,243 names contained in the monument at the Confederate mound in Oakwood Cemetery, and 7,000, the extreme reported by some historians. By best estimates, placed the total between 5,000 and 6,000. The exact number has never been established, and thanks to poor record keeping by both the Union and Confederate armies and the actions of those who cared for the bodies after death. Initially, Confederate prisoners died at Camp Douglas were buried in City Cemetery, soon to become Lincoln Park. January 1867, the Army agreed to remove remains from the city cemetery and 655 bodies from graves at the smallpox cemetery near the camp to Oakwoods Cemetery, 67th Street and Cottage Grove Avenue in Chicago. It was even with the poor record keeping, it is acknowledged that more Confederate soldiers are buried in Chicago than anywhere north of the Mason-Dixon line. The Confederate mound of Oakwoods is also acknowledged as the largest mass grave in the Western Hemisphere. Now, at the time this was written, it was the largest mass grave. They have found one close to New Orleans that's bigger. They also found one on an island in New York that's larger. And I think they found another. So I think this has been reduced to fourth place. It's either third or fourth largest mass graves. And I tell you, when I first approached paranormal group that I was in for a while, when I mentioned this, that you're talking about going to investigate a place where one or two deaths occurred, and you're trying to get evidence from one or two spirits that's related to the place, and that's all the people that died there. This place had between 5 and 6,000 deaths. Shouldn't you investigate where that many people died instead of traveling from Chicago and driving 3 or 4 hours to go to a location, as I say, where 2, 3, 4 people died? Why not go to a location that we could all meet at a place and get to within an hour and investigate a place where between 5 and 6,000 people died? So I finally did the homework, worked with the city for about a year, and got permission to overnight the park there. The other area where the latrines were finally installed and a lot of the barracks were built is a free open area, or it was at the time. It is now built up with condos. And I believe Tony Zabisky is going to try to interview some of the businesses at a little strip area right where the smallpox hospital was. Used to have a grocery store and a Radio Shack there, and I believe that's all gone. There's some more businesses in there now. I'll leave that to Tony Zabisky because I'm no longer in Chicago to interview people there to see if they had seen anything. It makes it convenient, though. Of course, that's not the best neighborhood in the world. You could just pull up in the morning or early at night, especially if you got a little bit of security with you, and investigate the parking lot. But outside of that, you just have to investigate the Meadows Lake Park during their operating hours, and they do close at 11 o'clock at night. And it's kind of busy. The people at the condos next door think that the city-owned park is all theirs. They don't like permits being issued. They have issues with people playing softball or cricket or whatever. You're supposed to. They think that you've got to get their permission to use their park when it's not their park. It belongs to the city, and therefore anybody in Chicago can go up there and get a permit to play in the park. So good grief. But they are a little possessive in those condos next door. I'd advise anybody trying to get there for an overnight investigation, you probably will have to wrestle over the city, and then you're going to have to fight off all kinds of mess from the condos because they'll want to give you their permission, whatever. Anyway, let's go on go. Since it is Halloween now, officially, I'm going to show first I want to show these videos of the pictures again while I can talk, because before, when I showed them, I could not say anything about them. So we're going to go to 1 and then 2, and I'll really quickly say what's in the shot. Here's a map of the camp. Here's an overhead drawing of the camp. Prisoners, the prisoners. Actual Civil War photos of prisoners at Camp Douglas. This is a reunion in 1894. More prisoners. There's the mule. The ball and chain punishment. Here is Oakwood Cemetery in the memorial. Under that ground you see there is 5,000 to 6,000 buried side by side in 3 rings around that memorial. Tall Memorial Center. That's a Jewish cemetery there. Right there. There it is again. Is the center. Around that flagpole you see there are 3 rings of dead, shoulder to shoulder, in a circle, 3 circles. They fill up one circle, and here come more dead people coming down the street. They're all buried on this little mound here in Oakwood Cemetery on South Side Chicago. This, I believe, was some more footage of the actual site of Camp Douglas. This is shot in full spectrum. I know it's pink. Full spectrum photography during the daylight, where you get a lot of infrared and you get a lot of UV from the sun, and red and purple make pink. So that's what all this area is Lake Meadows Park there in Chicago. That's the guy I was with investigating. It's a beautiful place. During the summer, it's kind of busy. You can get a tremendous amount of shade. So you got a picnic if that's what you want to do. There are no dead buried here. This is just where they died. As far as activity goes, at night you can see shooting lights in the grass. There are talking there. Now, of course, if you go and investigate it now, people haven't really investigated the place very much at all since I was there and did this investigation. Need to investigate it 2 or 3 times during the day, build up their energy, and then you can get some results. Because they just don't have a whole lot of energy, or not used to somebody trying to speak to them. The first time I went there and tried to get them to speak to them, it wasn't very easy, and they can get a whole lot. I finally got somebody after about 45 minutes. Some of the permits I had to get. Now here's a regular camera. See, it's quite a beautiful place. This is a different time of year. This is spring, just before I went there. There's a Stephen A. Douglas. And Stephen Douglas donated the land to the Union, as it was his family land. His old home was there. It's about gone except for one small portion of wall. But they did build his memorial there. He is buried just off the Camp Douglas grounds. You can walk there in about 5 minutes from Camp Douglas location. This is some of the pictures outside of his tomb. There is his sarcophagus. You could actually walk up to his sarcophagus. There's his bust. Another shot of the sarcophagus. It's open during the summer. During the winter, they keep the park locked up. And early spring and late fall, they may unlock the park, but they don't unlock the tomb. During, I believe, June, July, August, they will unlock the tomb and allow you to view their sarcophagus, which is an amazing thing. Now, what I'm going to do is show some regular photos again because I showed them earlier, but the microphone just decided to quit working with StreamYard. Couldn't get it turned back on. I had to refresh. This is what's left from an evacuation, excavation that they did just a month or two before these photos were taken. They went 6 feet down and they found quite a few Civil War artifacts, belt buckles, buttons, that kind of thing. You're not allowed to dig in this park. These guys got a special permit from the city to excavate that small area. Some of the paths in the park. Oh, I said 11 o'clock. It closes at 9. Some of the stands outside the softball field and the softball field. Basketball court. That's a closed school. Oh, this was just taken just for the air show. That was the C-130. The air show was actually in progress when these photos were taken. Had I been taking video instead of stills, I would have gotten a lot of loud jets going over. As you see, some of these photos were taken different times of year. This currently is middle of summer. Just a beautiful park. I'd say go there. Just look out for the condo people next door. As I say, they don't like anybody using their park. There's, I believe that's the Blue Angels. This is how you do an investigation. Get your photos for B-roll. It's a beautiful place. It's hard to believe that 5,000 to 6,000 people died in this area. I think I just missed the plane. about another minute of these photos. Like I said, these are just generic daytime photos just to see the size of the place. So in the past, they described it as 88 acres of hell, especially the latter parts of the war, 1864-65, with no prisoners exchanged. Of course, it was actually a nastier place earlier, but it is some improvements, and then it's way overloaded it in 1864. Way too many people for even the improved facilities to handle. Okay, last minute. Like I said, these are rare generic photos. So if you go there in the spring or through the summer, sometimes Chicago's not a bad place to be during the spring, especially, or during the summer because it's a little bit cooler in this down south. And you got the lake, you got the beaches, and this park's not far from any of it. Not far from Soldier Field. Okay, that is a lovely place. And now, what I'm going to show you is what we did at night.
Do we have any prisoners with us here today? Tonight? Go for it, Len.
It's any of my relatives here. A private green. It's Greenville, South Carolina. If you're here, I'm your relative. I'm here to take you home.
We want to talk to the men here. Are there any men here that were prisoners? All right, let's get started nice and simple here. We got a nice group here. We're here to talk. We're here to learn. We're here to experience. This man right here, his name is Len. Can someone say his name, Len?
Man.
That was again. I thank you. Can someone please, male voice, the females be quiet please. Say Len for me again.
What?
Your name again.
A male's voice.
All right, I thank you.
Thank you.
Are we talking to my relative, Private Green, from Greenville, South Carolina?
No.
Somebody else.
Are there any prisoners here from the early 1800s?
sit down, but I need to
We're at an
get up,
old
okay?
prisoner
I need to
camp,
sit down, but I need to
Civil
get
War.
up.
Can someone
I'll
tell
help
us
you.
the name of the location we're at? Volume's not all the way up. Then I'd have to turn it off. Yeah. They got an obvious here though. I don't know why I'm not getting a left speaker on that.
You should tell I have a speaker in my car like that, dude.
Yeah, but it could be on my unit that it ain't turned up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is there a button on the side?
Alright, we want to hear at Camp Douglas. Can someone tell us the location we're at?
That was two broken up voices got split.
Well, that's not even on.
There it is.
Thanks, Bill.
I had him jam that one in too. Alright, let's try this again. Tell us the name of the location we're at. Someone please say Camp Douglas.
I heard it. I.
Alright, now we want the ladies please to be quiet. We're looking for prisoners. Someone please, once again, say Camp Douglas. We heard you before. Are there any prisoners here with us?
I heard one.
I heard no and then one. Does anybody know that this was the prisoners area at Camp Douglas? They're sitting on my name again.
Said Len. Said Len.
Alright, my name is Carl. I'm talking with you now. Can you please say my name, Carl?
Len.
One of the girls has a crush on me.
They all do. I have a crush on you.
We're over here by the barracks. I heard it. And there's a big tree. Can you tell us what kind of tree that is? It's an oak tree. Can you say oak tree for us?
Can you tell me how many people are here right now, standing here? How many people are here? How many men are here? How many women are here?
right, I really want to hear my name again because it's a difficult name to copy. Yep.
As you were speaking.
They didn't say my name, they said
Carl.
it. Thank you. Are you the same female that's spoken to me before, or are you from Camp Douglas?
Bill, can you shine this down on them?
Is the woman who said my name's
Just hold
my
it down,
name
point it
Anna
down to
or
that.
Anna Marie?
Just hold it toward them. No, just stand up and hold it down. Over there. You don't have to get that close. You can stand right where you were. Just hold it up against your chest. Yeah,
Are you
point
Anna
it there.
Marie?
You like that? Down just a little bit further. No, tilt it down a little bit. That's good.
Can I speak to Anna Marie, please?
Are we speaking to Anna Marie?
Are we speaking to, am I speaking with Anna Marie? Anna, are you here right now? What was your voice?
Sounded like it.
I wasn't the only one who thought that.
We've copied before.
I know, but that was... Am I speaking with Anna Marie? Anna Marie, my name is Trisha. Can you say hi?
Takes about 7 seconds for the question, remember? We just want to say hello and thank you.
Everyone's trying to say welcome between two different voices.
There's no microphone on that thing.
Can someone just say hello to us?
There's no microphone on
Can you say hello? Can you say hello or hi?
Are there a lot of bodies buried around in this area that we're standing right now?
You turn off. Oh, you move the light. You move the light.
Are there bodies right below us?
You know, you asked that question when I heard a note to start with. There's just no bodies buried here, which is the correct answer. How many people died in this area? I heard a 20 and a 1.
And I heard death.
Death?
What city are we in? What's the name of this city?
What city are we in?
Can someone tell us Chicago? Slow it down.
Someone say Chicago.
Now we got a male voice talking.
How many people are here?
Someone just walked up. It's 9.
And they said 9, then it said 8.
Alright, 9, yeah.
How many women are here? Can the female voice tell me how many women are here? All that little female voice.
There's water very close to us. What's the name of it, or what type of body of water is it? I heard it.
How many spirits are on this land? The land that we're standing on, how many souls are here?
Anybody got a K2?
Just have your name again. It's so Carl.
Alright, we can hear you talking to us. Can anybody come over here and manipulate this? Make these lights go down right by us? If you're close. It's a K2. Can someone say a K2 meter? Somebody trying to light this up now? I'm going to step way out of bounds here. Easy, are you here? Easy E. What's your name? Ray?
That's amazing.
Did you hear it?
I heard Ray too.
Can you say Ray's name again? Bill.
Yeah.
My name's a tough name to pronounce. Say it again for me, please. Carl.
Yeah, I heard it. Can you say Carl?
Again.
What, I keep hearing like. Can you say Trish?
E.
Huh?
Did you hear that?
Can you say Trish?
E, are you out there? Could be a deep male voice. What's your name?
Ron.
Ron?
Yeah.
Right.
How are you?
Done.
Ron. Ron just showed up here. You say Ron's name?
I think they did. You said Don. You said Don. It may have been Ron. It may have been Ron.
I said Don. It was just Don.
Another one here by the name of Dan with the video camera. Can you say Dan?
Yeah.
You hear it?
Good.
Hello?
Midland. Can you tell us what color hat Len's wearing? What color is Len's hat?
Oh, that's a dead deer.
I want to hear Ray's name again. Someone liked saying Ray. Easy E, is that you saying Ray in that deep voice?
Who's that deep voice? Who's saying what?
Is there anybody here that we have spoken to before that isn't from here, that isn't from right in this area? I'm going to step way out of bounds and go back to my favorite place, but are there people from Bachelor's Grove here?
Is there somebody here from Bachelor's Grove? Is there somebody from the Patrick Plot from Bachelor's Grove here? Is Senator Humphreys here? I will ask this again. Is Senator Humphreys here with us now?
I don't think so.
I heard no. That's a good sign. That's a good sign. Let me see what the hell this is.
We got any besides Douglas names?
Is there somebody from Bachelor's Grove here with me, myself, Trisha?
Yeah.
You have an attachment.
How about me? Is there someone attached to me from the Grove? Somebody here is attached to Trisha over here, is there not?
Just yes. Clear say as loud as it can.
Carl, did you want to change spots? You want to stay here a little bit longer? What?
Here, somebody hold this. Hold that.
What's up? You alright?
Yeah, I'm good.
Can I ask your name?
I'm good.
Trisha, can you point that down? Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a no.
They're not going to attach.
Free will.
Are you from Bachelor's Grove?
Were you here at Camp Douglas?
Alright, in a female voice, all the males, all the men be quiet. I want to hear you say the name Ray again. Can all the males, can all the men be quiet? I know everyone's trying to talk to us. I want to hear the women say Ray.
What? That's an IR light. It's an IR light. Because I'm recording that with a
Can
camera.
the males be quiet for just a little longer and let the women talk and say Ray? Let me hear a female voice say Ray. See how the males cut down? The deep voices are gone. Little longer, just let the women talk. No men, please. Someone female say Ray. That was female. Alright, I thank you. Everyone can try again, but I know you're all trying to communicate. Very difficult. Can someone say love? It's what the world goes round on, besides money. There was another Ray. We are at Camp Douglas. Someone tell us that. We're at Camp Douglas. That was the end of Douglas. Who's here that scared Trisha? Tell me your name, please.
I heard Nick and Ray.
I heard Ray.
Heard Nick just before that.
Is there a Nick here talking to us? I don't like that deep voice.
Heard Nick again.
Someone trying to light up this meter here? You can take everything you need out of me to light this up. You're trying, aren't you? Who's here by me now? You're here right now, aren't you? I heard another Nick. You're trying, I say thank you. You want to take a little more from me, go for it. Right here. I don't mean to scare you
What's your name?
Yeah, twice.
Am I talking to Nick?
Someone tell me the location. Douglas. Camp Douglas. Tell me where we're at, please.
Yeah, it is.
We're going to get going soon. We're going to try somewhere else. We say thank you for talking to us. Thank you very much. Can you say thank you or you're welcome back? All right, can you say goodbye to us?
Can you say bye? Bye.
We got a lot of things to do and a lot of spaces to go, so we're going to go now. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Your meter was going off.
Okay, we're going to say bye now. We're going to turn it off. One last chance. Bye. My name again.
All right, let's do this for another shot.
Roy Malone. I'm on the board of. Okay, now we finished the investigation. Right now, I'm going to bring in a couple of interviews we also did during this investigation. This is an interview of two board members of the Camp Douglas Restoration Society. they also allowed us to be here, and they appeared while we were there and gave us this recorded interview. This is very rare footage. Uh, this is the I got a couple of copies on my computer, and this is probably the only people who have it. So enjoy. Very rare interview from the Camp Douglas Restoration Society.
Douglas Restoration Foundation.
And I'm Bernard Turner. I'm also on the board of directors for Camp Douglas Restoration Foundation. And we are a 501(c) organization that is focused on telling the story of Camp Douglas, which people in Chicago and other places seem to have forgotten. As most people, or some people know, Camp Douglas was originally a Union camp that started during the beginning of the Civil War. And it was a place where soldiers came to actually join the Union Army. And over the course of time, as certain battles like Fort Donelson in Tennessee were lost, they decided to take some of the Confederate troops and bring them to Chicago and house them in Camp Douglas. And over the period of time, it was also a place where many of them perished because of very poor conditions. But we really want to tell the whole story of the Union camp, the participation of African Americans in the Civil War, and some other goals that we have.
Yeah, one of the goals two of the 64 barracks that existed at Camp Douglas. And one of those barracks would be a visitor center, it would be a gallery, and then the second barracks would be a gallery that would represent the contribution of African Americans in the Civil War.
But what were the plans on the barracks? Where you have any place to put them yet, or are they going to be full sized?
Yeah, right now we're thinking about the barracks being where the Griffin Funeral Home is, and the Griffin Funeral Home is around 32nd and King Drive.
Which is just about 2 blocks from here.
Yeah, about 2 blocks from here.
But there are other places where we might also be able to put the museum, and all in this neighborhood. But obviously it depends on getting cooperation from institutions or getting cooperation from other entities in the city.
What do you want
to up in the air?
What do you want to put in the barracks?
We want to put memorabilia. We want to put pictures. We want to have stories. We want to have artifacts. We are also in the process of doing archaeological investigation. We started last summer right here in the Lake Meadows Park, and we've pulled out things that probably existed in the 19th century. So those are the kinds of things that we want to put in there.
Aren't you planning another dig this summer?
Actually, we are. We're planning another dig this summer. We're not sure exactly the location, but possibly at the Griffin Funeral Home location, which is 3232 South King Drive.
Well, this is where the headquarters was, correct?
Yes, the headquarters was just to our left, so to your right. We're finding, or I'm finding, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, that the more we talk about this, the more interest that it's generating among Chicagoans. A lot of Chicagoans have never heard of Camp Douglas, and I'm going to say and admit right now that I had never heard about it until I met David Keller, who is on our board of directors. We want people to know that there was a camp here. We want to, we've already started doing lesson plans and a curriculum so that students, especially students who live in this community, know that there was a camp here and that there were African American soldiers who spent time at that camp. We want the students to not only learn from the curriculum, but we want them to participate in an archaeological dig.
Well, very good. Is there anything else we can tell the viewers?
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Okay, and you can also take a look at our website, www.campdouglas.org.
www.campdouglas.org.
Yes.
That's it.
Hope everybody has that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Appreciate it a lot.
Okay.
All right.
Indeed.
Just on your website like 2 days ago.
All right, that was the two members of the Camp Douglas Restoration Society. Now, what I'm going to do now is bring another interview, another very rare interview of George Levy. He used to hit some of the Westerners meetings in Chicago. He also appeared in the Civil War Roundtable, of course, in Chicago, and other groups speaking about his book, because everybody that wrote a book wants to talk about it. I invited him out to come out. He was probably now long retired lawyer, attorney there in Chicago, and he graciously appeared and brought several copies of his book, To Die in Chicago. The best history that anybody has ever been in on and researched. There's another lady, I don't remember her name right now, that put a photographic book together collecting all the photographs from Camp Douglas. I recommend that book. But George Levy puts it in print and has it divided up by the commanders of the camp, of what happened at the camp and all the deaths and why. The reason during the investigation that you heard several women's voices is because one woman insisted on opening up her Sutter store. That's where the prisoners could buy items, tobacco, etc. And it was run by a woman who argued with the final camp commander threw her out of the camp and never let her come back. But for the first 3 years of the camp, she was there selling on a daily basis items that the prisoners wanted in exchange for credits and ended up being money in her pocket. But George Levy wrote the book explaining all this. That is To Die in Chicago. I believe it's still available on Amazon if you want to read it. It's a good read. And here is George Levy.
This park just on the south side of Chicago. With me this evening is a man who wrote the book, and I say the book, on Camp Douglas, To Die in Chicago, George Levy.
Thank you. I believe that the main theme of the book is, were we two countries when the war started? A lot of historians say we were one country. They're wrong. And Camp Douglas shows that in many respects. For example, many of the officers did not understand the Southern prisoners because of their difference of language. Also, the Southerners ate much different meal than the Northerners did. For example, they didn't eat white bread. They only ate cornbread. In fact, prisoners said, we belong to a different country. Therefore, you have to treat us with respect. We're prisoners of war. That did not happen. Camp Douglas became the flashpoint for retaliation against Confederate prisoners for what was happening in Andersonville and Belle Isle and Libby Prison. And the retaliation against the prisoners resulted in a count of over 4,000 dead. Some people say 6,000. That could be the case. The camp is a study in contrast. Next to the brutality and the horror of Camp Douglas, for example, not giving them vegetables so they caught scurvy, that was deliberate. The beatings by the guards, the shootings of prisoners for minor infractions. Next to that, the government built the most modern prison camp of the Civil War, probably the most modern prison camp in the world. This camp here had running water toilets. No other camp ever had that. And that was an experiment. They built a hospital that had its own laundry with running water toilets inside. One inspector said, the Civil War hospitals stink terrible. because the toilets were in the building. But at Camp Douglas, there was no such stench. So it's a study in contrast. I believe that the administration of Washington used Camp Douglas as a testing ground. They wanted to see what can be done for a permanent camp base. And they did it at Camp Douglas.
Your book covers all this, of course.
The book covers all of that, yes. They ran sort of water lines from Chicago out to the camp to flush the toilets. And they built sewer pipes that unfortunately emptied into Lake Michigan. So all the filth from the camp polluted the lake out here at 31st Street. But no other camp had such a plumbing system. The water came into the camp under pressure, just like in your home where you turn a faucet and the water would run. Camp Douglas had that. May I just add, Camp Douglas had its own fire department.
Really?
Yes. Because, of course, the buildings were very flimsy, dry wood, and no prisoner ever started a fire, which is an incredible record. There seemed to be an unspoken agreement that they would not start a fire because the camp commanders let them keep their matches. They needed them for the cigars. They were all addicted to nicotine. So in exchange for that, letting them keep their cigarettes, their matches, they did not start any fires.
So exactly, we're close to the headquarters here, isn't that correct?
The headquarters might be to the south of us.
To the south, right here.
Right. We're in, I think, Garrison Square.
Garrison Square.
Right, yes.
Now we do have a mule over here if you want to ride it.
That was the other torture, right? The Camp Douglas mule, which was a board the prisoners had to sit on with the board turned up, and in the worst weather imaginable, sub-zero weather, they'd be shifted out there to ride on the mule if they caused problems. So again, Camp Douglas is a terrible measure in contrast. It was extremely modern. And on the other hand, it was a cesspool of brutality.
And there was how many people here at times?
26,500 went through the camp during the war, but there was never more than 13,000 here at one time.
Here one time.
Exactly, yes.
And what about this mule? You know, most
mule,
people don't know what that is.
The mule was a piece of wood stretched between two wooden horses, turned up. The prisoners would have to sit on that. It was quite painful. And by the way, that punishment was also inflicted on the guards who stepped out of line.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Now, didn't they have another punishment with a ball and chain or something?
Yeah, ball and chain, and then there was a dungeon that was out there on East 31st Street, East 33rd Street, 33rd place, called White Oak Dungeon.
Oh, okay.
And which was 12 feet underground with an open sink. The stench was horrible, and they put prisoners down there as punishment also.
Didn't you say in your book also about them having to either sit down on ice where the ground was frozen or stand there until the ice melted to the dirt?
Yes, one of the problems was the administration gave the camp guards full authority to do whatever they wish. But now whenever you give a prison guard authority to do whatever he likes, you're going to get incredible brutality. So they would get drunk, rouse the prisoners out of their barracks, make them sit on the ground in snow and ice.
Wow. But where can people find your book?
It's on it's Hoarders, not Hoarders, Barnes & Noble. It's also on Amazon. Those are the two major places.
Right. In the $20, $25 range?
Yes, about that range, yes. Yes.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about a book or about you?
Camp Douglas, I think, makes clear the incredible brutality and inhumanity of the Civil War. Look, the Civil War has been terribly over-glamorized and romanticized. They're spending millions of dollars to buy strips of land in the South where men killed each other like animals. Camp Douglas attempts to show that there is no glamour in the Civil War. There is no romanticism. That it's a dirty, filthy, stinking war. And it all happened right here in Chicago. Another part of Camp Douglas was the treatment of black soldiers. Now, strange as it may seem, the Union Army captured about 11 blacks during the Civil War. Some of them were apparently soldiers, and retaliation against them, they were kept here for years before they were finally released. Out of the 11, only about 5 managed to survive the camp. So the treatment of blacks by the Union Army was horrendous. In fact, President Lincoln had to issue a bulletin to the camp commander. He was sending the officers to an officers' camp and letting them keep their slaves. And Lincoln had to send the telegram saying, look, you do not do that. You do not send the slaves back into slavery. And he did. That was quite early, in March of 1862, right at the very beginning. In fact, it was March 15th when President Lincoln sent that telegram to Camp Douglas.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And all right here on the south side of Chicago.
It all happened right here, yes.
It's
Yeah,
amazing.
very
That's
historic ground.
amazing.
Yes.
Well, we appreciate the interview, and
It's a pleasure to be here.
we wish you luck with your book sales.
Yeah.
Okay, this has been our Camp Douglas interview with George Libby, the author of To Die in Chicago. Thank you very much.